America is immune.
It's interesting that no one ever says, well, China's got the fastest growing economy in the world. They have an obligation to take in millions of refugees from other countries. Nobody ever says that. Nobody says that about the Gulf states. It's only Christian countries that have this obligation. And I think it's obviously destroyed those countries. Germany, I mean, people are getting raped in Germany on the street long before the Hamas attacks of October 7th. This is a long-standing problem. So, but why do you think that is? Why do you think that prosperous Christian countries in the West have this obligation that every other country, India, China, Saudi, they're all exempt from it? What is that?
Yeah, and I mean, take Japan. You know, Japan, a fully functioning modern democracy, but Japan, of course, takes hardly anybody. In fact, even on legal immigration, Japan is very strict and very tight because they want to protect the integrity of their culture and their country. Why? Partly guilt. I think the older countries seem to be absolutely infused with guilt about their colonial past. But also...
Wait a second. Japan was one of the most aggressive colonial powers in history. But no one's pushing them. Why? I mean, I'm not a conspiracy nut, but it does seem like this is an effort to destroy certain kinds of countries. And of course, it's worked.
Yeah.
Why not just say that?
We have allowed the virus of Marxism to take hold in our countries. We're being told to be ashamed of our histories. We're being told that we're institutionally racist. We're being told that we suffer, you know, from our own form of bias, and we indoctrinate our school kids with this stuff. And the reason this neo-Marxist agenda has taken such hold in Britain, Europe, and indeed in much of America too, is actually not because of the left. It's because the conservatives in those countries have not had the courage to stand up to this stuff. And, you know, you look at my country, we're being told we should be ashamed of slavery. Do you know, we spent nearly 50 years using the Royal Navy at massive cost, stamping out slavery, stopping the rest of Europe carrying out slavery. But nobody ever comes up with those arguments. Conservative cowardice through politics and media has led to so very much of this.
Well, Britain ended the transatlantic slave trade.
So the moment of awakening is coming.
Well, so your own prime minister, who is a conservative, but obviously has zero interest in the country that he supposedly runs, for example, that's very obvious as an American looking across. His new priority is ending tobacco use in a country with a massive narcotics problem and a massive refugee problem and an economy based on what, banking or something that's falling apart? Why is he focused on tobacco? I'm confused.
Do not for one moment please make the mistake of thinking the party that is now in power in my country and has been there for 13 years has anything to do with being conservative. They're not. We have the highest tax burden we've had since 1951, when we were busy paying off wartime debts. We have the growth of a surveillance society that punishes the innocent and never the genuinely guilty. We have legislation to control our lives at every level. We've just put up corporation tax by 30% to damage every man and woman running a small business that wanted to reinvest and grow in this country. And despite Brexit, we still have not lifted the regulatory burden, which of course supports the big corporates but damages the entrepreneurs. And for Sunak, 1 year on from an election, to decide his main priorities were to stop anybody after 2009 buying cigarettes, whilst we have a massive, massive problem with drugs causing huge short-term damage to our youngsters. Oh, and the other thing is to fiddle around with the A-levels that 18-year-olds do. Neither of those two things would have been on the top 25 priorities of almost anybody in our country. And that's why we're headed next year in this country for a dramatic, dramatic collapse of conservative support in the general election. And you know what? Not only will they lose the election, they deserve to lose it.
Yeah, I mean, I would support someone from the hard left who actually cared about England over Sunak, who clearly despises the country that he runs. But I just want to zero in on this question of tobacco. So it's impossible to imagine him saying cannabis use has massive side effects. It's not helping our country at all, and we're going to phase it out. That would be inconceivable. But tobacco use, which has long-term bad health consequences, true, but also raises testosterone levels. That's the threat? Like, how is that the threat?
No, I mean, it's absolutely wide of the mark. And yeah, you're right. Tobacco causes long-term potential problems, but it doesn't actually cause short-term problems. Drugs cause psychological short-term problems, absolutely deleterious to our younger generation.
Yeah.
But he sidestepped the big issue, went for what he thought was the easy one. And look, everywhere we see the growth of big government that wants to control every aspect of our lives. And it's all irrelevant. Our national debt, our debt interest payment is massive, just as it is in the USA. Our entrepreneurship is falling. Our levels of national security through failed immigration leave us more vulnerable to internal terrorist attack than ever before. It's almost unbelievable that banning cigarettes for anybody born after 2009 could even be seen to be a priority.
Countries that hate themselves have trouble continuing, I would say, and I hope that both of ours change course. Nigel Farage, I so appreciate talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tucker.
Younger people say the news is full of lies.
In Kennedy's motorcade.
239 people. The death of Jeffrey Epstein.